Tim Jasinski began his involvement with the Lake Erie Nature and Science Center in 2007 as a volunteer, was hired as a full-time seasonal in 2010, was hired again as a part-time seasonal in 2011, and was hired in a part-time position in 2013, and promoted to a full-time position in 2014 as a wildlife rehabilitation specialist. His exceptional interest in animals has elevated the center's wildlife rehabilitation outcomes and has led to its participation in the Lights Out Cleveland Bird Conservation Initiative. Tim is a member of the Ohio Wildlife Rehabilitators Association, where he has served as a conference speaker about waterfowl, songbirds, fostering rehab patients, woodcock care, and many other topics. The OWRA recognized Tim's work in the field at their 2019 annual conference. Tim has also worked with rehabilitators across the United States, teaching specialized skills about hard-to-care-for species. He has received professional training through OWRA, the National Wildlife Rehabilitation Association, and the International Wildlife Rehabilitation Council, and shares his knowledge with his colleagues, interns, volunteers, and members of various animal conservation associations across the country. Tim has a great passion for all wildlife rehabilitation, but has special interest in waterfowl. His favorite animal to work with is a Canada goose. Tim will discuss what wildlife rehab is and give some specifics on what he does each day and throughout the year, and we'll share some success stories. Tim Jasinski.
Thank you. Thanks, Larry. What kind of bird that is? Yep, it's our first warbler that we admitted this year from Lights Out Cleveland. It was the only bird found live, I think 5 days ago now. And when my coworker sent me a picture, I'm like, ah! And I called him right away. I'm like, would you know what that is? He's like, no, what is it? And so that's obviously a bird we don't get up here too much, but I think he came in 11.3 grams, and he's 14.7 today, so he's getting chunky. And he'll probably be released whenever, I think Thursday it's supposed to be nice, I think, so he'll probably be released when the weather's a little bit better and not gloomy. Where
was he downtown?
He was found near Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse. So.
The Rocket Mortgage Bird Mortuary.
Yeah, I can't say that, but you can. So, wildlife rehabilitation, what is it? So it's basically it's caring for sick, injured, and orphaned wildlife with the goal of getting them back into the wild. That's the whole goal of rehabilitation. In order to do rehabilitation, you have to have a lot of permits involved. So many people don't realize that. We have to have permits from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, Division of Wildlife, USDA, County Board of Health, Cleveland Metro Parks, and other different small organizations that we have to have permits for, because you just can't take care of wildlife illegally on your own. You have to, there are permits that we have to involve with that. So, what's involved with wildlife rehabilitation? A lot of intakes. I'll talk about our some of our stats from last year in the next slide. But we take a lot of phone calls, we take visitor questions, and we get a lot of emails. So now it's the day where we can have someone send a photo, and we can actually look at the photo and confirm it's not, or it is an animal. What they say it is, it's almost never what they think it is. I've had many people say they saw a dead eagle on the road this time of year. It's always a goose because they're fighting and crossing roads. It's never been an eagle. And I've had people bring me a baby hawk, and it was a robin. I had a guy that was heavily intoxicated, that he went to a meat shop because he had found a baby turkey vulture that he needed to buy food for, and they kicked him out because he was wasn't good. He was trying to buy raw meat, and it was a baby pigeon. So you never know. So these are our stats for last year. We took in 4,751 animals, and that's including all the birds that are from Lights Out Cleveland, and that's about 3,000 birds that we get from down there every year. So total species of 186 species. We had 5,428 phone calls, and then visitor questions, we don't really count those, and then around 1,500 emails. So during our busy season, which is May, June, and July, we have an interaction with the public about every 6 minutes. So it's like we don't really get to eat ever, which is, get used to that as a rehabilitator. So what else is wildlife rehabilitation? So we're teachers. Obviously, we teach our interns and volunteers and other rehabilitators. We're mentors, construction workers, which I'm not good at. My coworker Kyle does that for me. Psychiatrists, because people will call and they're upset that they just ran over a nest of bunnies and they're like So it's like you got to be compassionate with these people when they call. We're animal people, obviously innovators, because you have to as rehabilitators, you have to be really clever on how you care for certain species, or how you do certain things in rehabilitation to make it successful. And obviously, conservationist is a main thing. It's really funny. Sometimes I'll talk about some of the calls we get, but I had a guy call the other day, and he was serious, and he said he thinks he found a chupacabra dead, and I'm like. So that's a mythical creature, and so you just got to be professional. But I'm laughing inside, So some of the main calls we start to get every year, it's kind of the same thing that people call, and there's a cardinal trying to get in their house. It's not trying to get in their house; it's attacking some reflection. Robins, goldfinches, any of the pretty birds that do that. So that kind of starts in mid-March, April. And we get the same calls kind of every year. Right now is going to be fawn season here in a couple days. And we'll get 15, 20 voicemails and phone calls about fawns and how they're abandoned in someone's yard, which they're not abandoned, but people think they are. So we have to talk them through that it's not abandoned, why they're not abandoned, and then get on the phone with another person, say the whole thing over again, and over and over and over. It's pretty crazy, but I mean, you can see how I took this photo in the back of the center at work here, not here at the center in Bay Village, but you can see how they blend in perfectly on this forest floor, but they don't really blend in well on a concrete driveway or your fresh cut grass lawn. So, but this is one of the calls we get a lot of right now is fawns. I haven't had one yet, but it's going to be usually beginning of May. They start having babies, so it should be soon here. We also get calls about nestlings or fledglings or even hatchlings on the ground. So we just tell people to try to get them back in the original nest if they can, or if they can't. Why is it going forward? What did I do? If I can't get them in the original nest, you can make an artificial nest just like that top left little plastic container there. Put some dried grass in there, leaves, poke holes in the bottom, and then put the babies back in there, and then the parents will still care for them. If they're tiny hatchlings, though, it probably won't work that way because they have to be brooded by the mother or father or both, and they won't be able to be on both nests at one time. So that's where the photos are good to have come in, because then we can confirm the age of the bird and make sure they can get the original nest, or if it has to come into rehab. So that's an American robin nest. So rehabilitation is also obviously caring for all the animals that actually do come to the center. They're sick, injured. We have to do a lot of assist feedings, fluids, hand feeding baby birds. We haven't had we had one house sparrow come the other day, which we don't take, so we obviously euthanize that humanely. But we get baby birds that we have to feed every 15 minutes from when we get in to when we leave. So that'll be starting soon here. And it's every 15 minutes our volunteers and us and volunteers and interns are caring for these guys. We obviously do a lot of bandages and wraps. We have to be clever on how we do that sometimes. For the larger birds, we use this little thing called a SAM splint where we can kind of mold the foot to sit in position so it doesn't move. But then sometimes we just use those Ziploc lid things for containers you put food in. We just cut a little shape like a little robin foot and just tape his foot to that, and that keeps it nice and straight. But it's light, so he's not, because if it's heavy, they can't stand. So we have to be, kind of innovative, like I was saying before. Medications, lots of cleaning, lots of poop to clean up, and then releases obviously are the.
Is that fishing line?
Yep, that's fishing line, a Canada goose, and we get a lot of that. And you can see how the body walled off the line, and it just builds up because it just it's not supposed to be this. The body's fighting it off, and it's good and bad. When it's that bad, usually the body actually walled off the line, and so that's not actually touching anything anymore. So you just cut the one part, and it just comes through the whole, just in one piece. But there's usually a lot of tissue damage and tendon damage. But we could fix up a good amount of them, though. What we don't do is we don't trap wildlife. We often get that call where they have a raccoon in their attic or their shed or their tree, and they don't want raccoons or other animals in their yard. So we don't do that, obviously. We don't relocate animals to other areas. They belong where they're at, so we can give them advice on how to chase them away from what they're doing. Usually it's us that's causing the problem, and we're blaming it on the animals, usually. We don't rescue turtles. Turtles have evolved millions of years, never changed much, so they know what they're doing. So we tell them, leave them alone. If you can cross them in the direction they're going safely across the road, take them that way, but just leave them alone. They know what they're doing. We don't take unwanted pets. We don't take monarchs. We get a lot of calls about that, so I just refer them to Rocky River Nature Center because Jen Brumfield knows a lot of people that do that, so I send them over there. And we don't recommend food for wild animals because they have everything they need in the wild. We're not the police or animal control or Division of Wildlife or Cleveland Metro Parks. We're actually not part of Cleveland Metro Parks. We're in Cleveland Metro Parks, but we're our own entity, so we're a totally different thing, but we definitely support each other, and obviously we're not for profit. So this is kind of an interesting slide that I did here coming up. I was thinking about why wildlife is admitted. So there's different reasons why wildlife is admitted. So this loon came in because they get grounded. See how their feet are set real far back on their body? They can't stand on land, so they can't take off from land. So they'll often get stuck on the photo to the right. There is a photo I took of our sidewalk out at the center, and it looks just like the river to the left. So wet pavement looks just like open water to these birds because they didn't evolve with concrete. They don't know that it's hard. So they land on that and they can't get back up into the air. And so then it's a tricky situation to rescue loons because they're really, really, really stabby and very angry. So we have to, be careful with that. But so there's only two natural reasons why wildlife is admitted. Weather, which could still be caused by humans. It could still be climate change. So that's still human related. And then predator-prey interactions. Crows always find baby bunny nests. And then people see that happen and they try to stop it. And that's nature. It sucks watching that, obviously, because baby bunnies scream really loud. But crows are just trying to feed their babies and take care of themselves. So it's not fair to interact with that. But people often, we just got one brought in the other day. And then hawks. I had a gosling dropped by a hawk the other day. Hawk was flying, just dropped this gosling in someone's yard, and the hawk kept going. So those are two reasons. All of these reasons are the other reasons why we get them. I'll give you a second to read that. That's all human related. And some of these can be elaborated on, obviously kidnapped with the fawns. People steal them because they think they're orphaned. Entrapment is raccoons, possums, other animals will get stuck in garbage cans because they climb in and can't get out. Or baby skunks always get stuck in those window wells on your house. They climb in and they can't get out. Habitat destruction, rodenticide poisoning, raised illegally. Behavioral stranding is what I talked about the loon. We get a lot of birds stuck in that blueberry netting, screech owls, robins, cedar waxwings, all kinds of stuff. Rescued, there's one where they rescued a turtle from crossing the road, and then they drove from Southern Ohio all the way to Cleveland, and no, take it back. It belongs back there. We've had a lot of animals brought in with I'll show up in a couple slides coming up, but those body hold traps that you use for coyotes. I'll show you coming up here in a second. But another reason is cats. I love cats. I'm a cat crazy person. I have 6 of them. These are 2 of my cats at home. Cats belong indoors. They're a non-native invasive predator that destroys our wildlife populations. It's not their job to kill mice. That's for hawks and owls and bullfrogs and snakes and mink and everything else that's supposed to eat that. They're adorably amazing, but they belong inside. Plus for their safety too. I wouldn't want my cats to be outside where it's not safe for them. So I put cute photos with cats of 2 of my cats. I was making macaroni and I turned on Kitty-Wake. I named it after a kitty, black-legged Kitty-Wake. She's laying in the whatever those are called. I'm like, excuse me, I'm using that. Cats kill 3.4 billion songbirds annually in the United States. That's not sustainable at all. And then if you add in the power lines and windows, pesticides and habitat destruction, our songbird population is down 25% since the 70s. That's not good. It's just going down and down, and so we got to do something. So window collisions is a second issue that birds. I feel bad always doing rehab talks. It's always so negative, we'll get to the positive stuff at the end, but I mean that's just one day in bird collisions downtown. This was in 2002, 2003, I think. But I mean they a lot of birds hit windows, and often people say, "Oh, that bird's stupid." It's not stupid. It didn't evolve with glass, and it looks just like a mirror. It's a mirrored image, and so the birds don't understand that. There's a lot of habitat around our area, especially downtown, and so like right here, this is a great spot. We see a lot of sparrows and warblers and stuff over there. That's just glass, though. That's not habitat. So you think it's actually habitat, but it's not. And so the birds people run into that stuff. You see when they're doing construction, they put like a big tape over the glass because people run into it. So like if we do it and we know we're doing it, then that's a problem. I mean, look at all that habitat there. There's all those bushes. I've actually seen more Connecticut warblers downtown than anywhere. We collect probably on average, usually more in the fall. We get a couple in the spring, but probably average of 10 or 12 a year that we'll collect downtown. And I've seen more Connecticut's walking around downtown than I have anywhere else. That was just glass, though. Another thing we get is a lot is car collisions. People say the geese are stupid because they cross roads. It's not real smart, I'll agree, but during the summer, they're flightless. Did everyone know that? They can't fly during the summer. So they're such heavy-bodied birds, just all waterfowl in general, that if they molted all their feathers one by one, symmetrically like other birds, they wouldn't be able to fly. So they evolved to molt all their feathers at once, all their flight feathers at once, during like June and July when their babies are kind of half-grown. So once a pair of Canada geese has their babies when they're about 4 weeks old, then they'll drop their feathers, and then they grow them in, and then by the time the babies are flighted, the parents are flighted. So they actually travel a huge distance when they're when they're in this stage, because we actually have a banding project I'll talk about in a little bit, but we've found some geese like miles from one place to another, and they just walk. It's pretty impressive, but they have to walk across a lot of roads and cause traffic jams and get people angry. And I actually have a sticker on my car, honk if you love geese, and I've had 7 honks so far. This is just stuff we've pulled off wildlife since 2015. So that crossbow bolt was from a goose from the Lorraine impound. Someone shot it, and it tried to get over the little metal pier thingy and got stuck and couldn't get out. So it had to be euthanized because it was too badly injured. That big square metal thing, it was in someone's yard. A possum had a big male possum was stuck in it, and someone trapped it. They were trying to get a woodchuck, and he said nothing else would get stuck in it but woodchucks. And she had dogs and stuff. So what are you doing? So it took forever to get this trap out. The possum in his arm was like, there's no way we can fix that. The bottom left was from a great horned that got stuck in a soccer net, and then the guy called us and said, "Hey, I got an owl in a soccer net." I said, "Well, bring it in. We'll remove all the line." Well, the bird got away or something, and it was found a week later with the stuff still on its feet, and it was stuck on a pole actually, so it couldn't go anywhere. And so we had a volunteer rescue it, and it ended up losing 2 of its toes, and they can't function that way. So, but that top left thing, the possum was stuck on. We've had a peregrine falcon stuck on a balloon. So all that stuff was removed off her wildlife. That bottom left trap that was stuck in a great horn in Lorraine, it's a coyote trap, and I don't know. We've had 2 great horns now stuck on those. So I don't know how they find that, but they put bait on it, and I don't know if they just see it or something. We have to work with a lot of cool birds, though. Does everyone know what species those are? Yep, the planetary, that's the only one we've ever had in 14,000 birds. That's the only one we've ever admitted. And it was released and had a nano tag, too, tagged. So, yeah, there's a mourning warbler on the bottom, kind of middle next to that bay-breasted, chestnut-sided black-throated blue on the bottom right. And they're just so cool. We deal with we take care of a lot of waterfowl. We specialize in waterfowl because I'm a nerd about it, but also my previous boss was a nerd about it too. So we're known for a waterfowl care. So we get actually waterfowl transferred from kind of other states, not only just Ohio, because we have specialized swim tanks that are designed for diving birds. So we actually took these ideas from the bird rescue places on the coast where they deal with a lot of grebes and loons and stuff. So we actually, or this sport netting that we use. And so when they're out of the water, if they're getting wound cleaning or something, they just poop right through the mesh. It doesn't get all their feathers because their poop's real acidic and it destroys their feathers. So this actually will help their feathers stay clean. And then the long-tailed duck there on the right, he is in our swim pools, and those actually have water that's always circulating. So water's always going in and coming out, so it keeps the water clean. any food, especially from fish or other things that we're feeding them, will compromise their waterproofing. And so this actually helps them. We're the only place in Ohio that has swim tanks like that. So there's a big kind of like an upper angle with a greater scoop in there. So we have the food up towards the front, so if any impurities from that go right down the drain, and it stays clean, and we actually it works out really well. We do take a lot of songbirds, obviously, too. There's some cedar waxwing chicks and a cardinal. They're the cutest, most passive, friendly babies ever. They're so polite, and they'll pass food to each other. When you feed them, they'll like feed each other. They're really adorable. And adorable too. Killdeer chicks. This little kid was the first one we actually kept alive because in rehabilitation, you're always trying to figure out how to fix things because our goal is to release them. So I don't know how that's happening. But we always had them die. So I kind of talked to other rehabbers and figured out what we can do to keep them alive. And so we changed some things around and we were able to release this guy. He got released at Sandy Ridge. So American woodcock have been a tough bird for rehabilitation to care for a long time. But you just have to look at their natural history to figure out how they can be successful in captivity. No animal from the wild wants to be in captivity. Obviously, they want to be back in the wild where they came from. So you have to kind of look at what makes them successful in the wild and how they eat and how they feed. And so American woodcock they're sandpipers, so they probe in the mud for worms. And so we used to just give them like a little tray of worms, and they can't eat out of that because they have to probe. So I kind of switched things around and made the setup on the left-hand side here where there's dirt about this, maybe about this deep, and there's a big dog food bowl full of night crawlers, and they eat almost all those in one night. They eat like their body weight in worms in one day. So it's not cheap. Each of those flats, I think it was 2 years ago, was $25. Now it's $50. For that. So we this time of year, the woodcocks are kind of like slowing down and they're coming in. We had 22 in care at one time about 2 weeks ago, and so they eat a lot of worms. So we usually get about 6 flats a week for them at that point. Now we released our last 4 yesterday that we had in care, and so we only have I think 3 of those flats in the fridge now. But it's really cool because these birds are really tough to care for. But I figured out what to do. And I'll go back to this other photo here. The left side, they flush. So whenever you get close to woodcock in the wild, and they fly up and almost hit your face, and you're like, they're like camouflage. They just kind of wait. So I've actually watched woodcock fly and land, and I watch where they land. I want to walk up and get a photo of them, and they just kind of flatten their body out, and they just sit there, and then they wait, and then you walk by them, or they flush. And when they start feeling better, they flush in the enclosure, and they re-injure themselves in the ceiling. So we started using foam to help not re-injure themselves. Guess how much that piece of foam is? 22 by 22 inches. Guess how much that is? $70. Why is foam so expensive? So we had some donated, and we purchased some, and so now we actually have that. We use couch cushions too, and that prevents them from injuring themselves. We also keep the doors. The photo on the right there. It's like a kind of a dog cage kind of thing that was donated. And we put the birds in there, and then we just put a towel over the front of it to keep it nice and dark, and then they do really well, and they eat a lot. So this girl, you can see on her above her tail, there's like a little wire coming out. That's a transmitter, and we're working with Powder Mill Avian Research Center in Pennsylvania to track some of our birds that we release post collisions, because often said that after a bird hits a window, oh, he flew away, he's fine. Well, how do you know? You don't really know, and most of them are probably not fine. But so once Lights Out Cleveland started in 2017, they wanted to do in Pittsburgh. They have a Bird Safe Pittsburgh group where they walk around buildings and collect the birds and rehabilitate them. They go to, I forget what the center is in Pittsburgh, but they wanted to do this nanotag thing where they would tag birds that are in. Because Powder Mill is a huge banding operation. They catch like 100,000 birds a year, 10,000 birds or something a year. And so they wanted to test if the rehab birds after release, if they survive, and then compare that to wild birds that were caught in mist nets there. So they were tagging the mist net birds and the rehab birds, trying to do that the same day to get a difference of if they're surviving or if they're not. And they weren't getting any birds in Pittsburgh like we do in Cleveland. So we saw what we were doing here. They're like, holy crap, you guys get a lot of birds. can we work with you? I'm like, yeah, of course. So we had a meeting, and then we've been tagging birds since then. And I think this is the last year we're going to do it. And he's putting the data together to look at it. But she was released. I think she was released on it was called 2 years ago on November 1st, I think. And one of the researchers with Cleveland Metro Parks came out to try to track them and see if they were still in the reservation. And she was there 14 days later, and he was able to track her and find. He got right where she was with the receiver, but he couldn't find her. And she was just flat out in the leaves like that, hiding. And he got a bunch of really, really good photos of her. And that's when he first walked up to her. Their camouflage is amazing. So. It showed that they like our habitat at the reservation, the Huntington Reservation. So we release a lot of birds in the reservation that can do well there. And certain birds, like today I had a common gallinule that I released at Sandy Ridge because they need a specific habitat, and Sandy Ridge is perfect. So it's our first gallinule we've ever released. We don't get too many of them either. So he was grabbed by a raptor, I think. But either way, so you want to do the right habitat for them. So Huntington Reservation is perfect for woodcock, and it shows because these guys are staying at the reservation. I think this one stayed for almost 2 weeks, and then she migrated out. I got a text from the guy yesterday. He wanted some lights out data, some current, because he was doing a talk in Pittsburgh today at a symposium, and he said that a few of our birds have done 4 migrations now. So they went up and down and up and down. That's really cool because that bird collided with the window, and so our rehabilitation worked, and they were able to release them and have some success. Another cool thing that we love to do as rehabilitators, but specifically with our center, is fostering. I love fostering birds because then we don't have to do all the work, but more so, it's better that they're raised with natural wild parents. There's a couple ways you can foster. You can have educational birds that you can put with your rehab birds, and if you have the right setup for it, and they can just kind of keep them comfortable and keep them acting wild. This great horned owl chick in the middle photo there went to a rehab center in White House, Ohio. They're called Nature's Nursery. They're a fantastic place. And we talk all the time, and I saw that they had it. I'm like, hey, I have a great horned family right down the street from work that has active chicks that just fledged if you want. And so she said, yeah, I'll bring it over. So they brought it over, and then me and my coworkers put him on the log there that night. And he stayed on the ground for 4 or 5 days. It was actually 3 days. And everyone was worried that he wasn't going to be, he's on the ground, he's not going to do well. But great horns are often on the ground when they're babies. They're tough, and the parents are super protective. And we had a caller that said they had a young owl in their yard, and my coworker said, well, send us a photo so we can see what species does it go from there. When he went out to take a photo of it, the parent came down and knocked him in the head and knocked him on the ground, knocked him over. So he's like, the parents are here, it's cool, we're good. So, that is, great horned owls are nothing to mess with. So I was actually, I didn't see the parents out there. And the first night that we fostered it, wasn't making any noise, which made me kind of worried. And anytime people would walk by, it would stare at us. And we were pretty far away, but it was still looking at us. So I was messaging, I'm like, I don't like this behavior on this owl. But then eventually, I was there 2 days later, and it was on the ground. It was calling out, which was good. And so the parents actually, I watched one of the parents fly over and give it food, and so I knew it was fine. And then 2 or 3 more days later, then it was finally up in the trees with its new siblings. So our bird is on the bottom left there, and the other 2 are on the top right there in the little square. So it was finally up off the ground with its siblings. And so it's just really awesome to be able to foster babies. Rehab is not always successful. I still call this a success. This red-tailed hawk came in as a fledgling or a branchling from near Crocker Park, and we couldn't find the family. We went to look, and we didn't hear any adults or anything. We don't really know where it came from. He was kind of skinny. So at this point, I wanted to find a foster family, so I reached out to my birder friends, and all you guys are birders too, so we know where the nests are, we know where all the stuff's happening. So a couple of friends said there's a nest at Cobb Reservation right off the trail, and there's a nest right there with active babies. So we took this guy out there, put him up in a smaller tree, and he laddered up, and the parents took care of him. And I had some birder friends take that photo in the bottom right after he was successfully raised with his family, his foster family. And back then we used to ban red-tailed hawks and other raptors. And he was doing great, but he was found dead in the fall, probably from West Nile virus. So even though it died, it's still a success because we didn't care for it in captivity. Wild raptors or wild family took care of it, and we still think that's a success. Barred owl chicks are very, very good at fostering. We have a pair right out back of the center that has babies every year, and this year they had 2 babies, and we gave them 3, and they took care of all 5, raised them all up to flight, and did really well. They can't count their own kids. They're not like people where they don't know. Here's a cool story. This is kind of our cool story section here. We had a little hooded merganser that came in by itself from a birder friend in Lake County. And so we never had a hooded merganser come in before. So we just set it up with our mallards, and it lived with our mallards for a little bit. Then the mallards got too big and we're picking on it. So then we put it with our wood ducks. And then they were fine for a while. Then eventually another rehab center got one. And so we asked them to give their bird to us. And so we raised them up into flight. It takes about 8 weeks for them to fly. So we had them banded and we let them go at Lagoon Picnic Area in Rocky River. And so I'm a nerd about this, as you can probably tell. So I go often to check on them. And I went to the one day to check on the birds, and I saw them swimming in the lagoon. I'm like, that bird doesn't look like ours for some reason. I was just thinking it wasn't one of ours. And they jumped out on a log, and only one had a band. So that showed that our bird found a wild bird, and they're acting wild and doing their wild thing, and that's what we want in captivity or after captivity, is we want them to act wild and not friendly and getting used to people. This mallard, another bad story, of course. It's got to be a bad story. She was killed by a hawk last fall, but she was hatched in 19. And we had her banded and released, and then in 2020, she came back to the release location with her own babies. So that was cool that we rehabilitated them, did everything right, and then she went on to have her own family and stuff. So it was really cool to see that. This is a really cool story, and it was wild. This was 2020, so nothing was really happening, right? 2020. And we had this Canada goose family that was poisoned, suspected from a neighbor that didn't like the geese. So the whole flock died except the female. And we kept her alive. We were able to pump her through, get the toxins out of her body. And she survived. And we had a bunch of orphan goslings at the time. There were 7 of them. And we put them with her, and she was really protective because she lost her babies. So I'm like, well, this is going to be a good time to see if she can take these. We always foster baby geese with wild families, but we never tried to foster wild babies with an adult that didn't have babies. So we let him go in Westlake. I think it was in July 16th, and I never saw him again. I looked all summer. I don't know where they went, but they were flightless because the babies were about 4 weeks old, and the mom was about 4 weeks from molting and her feathers growing in, so they were not flighted. So I don't know. They were not there anywhere, so I thought maybe a fox got them because there were foxes seen on the property that same day, so I figured maybe something happened. And then in the fall, we had a band return on one bird that was killed by a hunter in Akron. I'm like, well, it's not good, but it shows that at least one survived. Where are the other ones at? Then we got another report that one was seen at a pond in Parma where there's a lot of geese hanging out. And so I went to that pond, and there was 170 geese, and they all flew away right when I got there. I'm like, so I had to keep going back, and I didn't see any banded birds there. And then I'm like, well, you know what? I kind of suspected that once she was flighted, she would take her new babies back to her original location where she came from in Parma. And so it kind of confirmed they were in Parma because we got that one report. So I went back to the release location, and there was only 2 geese there, and they weren't banded, but I heard geese in the background flying, so I'm like, well, I'll wait and see if they show up. And they landed in the parking lot, and it was all of them. They were all right there. I'm like, where have you guys been? I'm like, I looked for you all summer. I checked every water source in Westlake because that's where we released them. And they weren't anywhere. So I don't really know if they teleported somewhere else, but they were not anywhere that I could find them, but they survived. And then even cooler, so that was 2020. So then last year, they would be breeding age, and one of the babies that we raised in this photo, or that she raised actually, went to our mallard release location and had a nest there. So they were raised in Westlake, they went back to Parma, but then they came back to Westlake to breed. So it's really cool how that works. It's really, really interesting. This is a mallard. This is when we started using color bands in our waterfowl. She was green over, metal band on her right leg. She was released in 2021, and she came back last year she had 4 babies. One kept wandering away from her, and it got eaten by something, obviously, and then she raised the rest of the 3 up to flight. And because I'm a nerd about this, as you can tell, I already mentioned that, I go and check on these birds almost every day after work, and I write down the band codes that I see, any notes and stuff. And I noted that the babies, when they hatched, and then when they were about 8 weeks old, then I didn't see the mom anymore for another 4 weeks. So I'm like, well, where the heck did she go? Why was she gone? And then almost to the day, 4 weeks later, she showed back up at the release location. What I realized is that geese molt their feathers, their flight feathers, when the babies are about 4 weeks old, but ducks wait until the babies are fully flighted. And I think it's because they only have one parent, so at least for most of the ducks, and so they don't have that protection times 2. They're smaller, and so I just think they've all. And I never knew that before until I was a nerd about this and followed these ducks around every day for the whole year, and so it's cool to see that. I never knew that before, so I started paying attention. And in the fall at Sandy Ridge last year, I noticed a lot of female wood ducks in like September that were still growing their feathers back. So it's really cool. I never would have known that if I didn't have these photos. This is another really, really cool story. Does anyone know what imping is? No? Yeah, you know what is it?
You replace, take or feathers out, or
Yep.
and you replace it.
Yep. So imping is an old falconry technique where you replace broken feathers with molted feathers. And so this duck in the bottom right here came from another rehabilitator in southern Ohio that the public had raised it illegally, and he was so sick that he couldn't even have his wings up because he was so weak. And all this outer primary, so like 10, 9, 8, 7, 6 were all shredded. And so he couldn't fly. So the rehabilitator got him healthy again and got his weight back up. But she's like, hey, can you overwinter this bird because I don't have a place for it and you guys are better with waterfowl. I said, yeah, you can bring him over. And we obviously had other ducks at the time. So I was thinking, wonder if we can imp this bird. So I emailed our vets and I'm like, hey, have you guys ever tried imping on a duck? And she said, I've never done it. I've seen it done at she went to Cornell. So she was like, I would be willing to try it. So a bunch of my friends are duck hunters, and so I called him and I said, hey, save me 4 male mallard wings for me. I want to try something. So he did. I gave the wings to the vet, and it took 2 hours, but she replaced all the outer primary feathers on both of his wings. And they're chunky birds, so she wasn't sure he would be able to fly, but we released him after, and he got that specific band code there, and the feathers look perfect. Like, you can't even tell those are fake. They're not fake, but like not his feathers. So he was at the release location. I think we released him in November, and he was there all the way through March, and then he left, and he was gone. And so I was searching for this duck everywhere, and I couldn't find him. But then he went down the street to a pond. In the summer, I saw him. I think I saw him in maybe April or May. I saw him, and I was like, okay, well, he survived. He's still hanging with his other ducks. And then in the summer, I found that male mallards or male ducks go into eclipse plumage in the summer. So when they're flightless, they turn their colors to look like females, so they blend in better. And so all these are, well, not all these. The top right bird, that's a male, but you can see the top left bird is a female. It's got a darker bill. So they look very similar, but the colors are still a little bit different. Like the upper tail the coverts and the feathers above their tail are real black on a male mallard, and the females are brown. And so I knew that was him because of his band color. You can see the white band up on the upper leg. And so then I saw he had molted, so I'm like, I wonder if I can find any of those feathers. I mean, that's not going to happen probably because the pond is huge and there's 150 ducks there or whatever. So I spent like an hour and I walked around the pond and I found 2 of them. So that showed me that not only the imping did work, he survived the winter, but then he molted them and I was able to find them somehow. And I showed all my volunteers at work, and most people can't tell the difference between the imped feathers, which are the 2 in the middle. You can see there's like that little cut line there. What they do is they take a little wooden dowel rod and they implant it inside. So they take the right feather for that right location. So all birds, their feathers are numbered. Their wing feathers are numbered. So the outer primaries, it goes 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And then secondaries go S1 and up. So you had to have the right numbers. And so she replaced all those. And so what they do is they cut the shaft towards like the upper, towards where it goes into the wing. And then they cut the other part of the other feather out and put a little wooden dowel rod in the middle of it and then glue it. And that's it. That's all they do. So he survived, and I haven't seen him since after he was flighted. So he probably because he was like kind of stuck there for a little while. I haven't seen him since, but he lived a whole year. So that was really cool because that proved that we could imp waterfowl, not just 1 or 2 feathers on a raptor that most people would be doing. A lot of the raptor rehabilitators do that all the time. They imp these feathers, but because he had so many to fix, it was like 2 hours of surgery, and it worked out. So that was a super cool story. One main thing we always tell people, always call us. Even if you think you're bothering us, you're not. We want people to call us because we want to be able to help. Even if you have a chupacabra in your yard, we want to make sure to tell you that it's not real. But we always want people to call because a lot of times they call, especially this time of year, we get so many calls of, well, I got rid of the raccoon mom, but now there's babies, I want to save them. It's like, we just killed the mom, and the mom looks like the babies, they grew up to be her, so like, don't do that, please. Call us. We can give you ideas of how to like make them go away or other things like that. So no questions too stupid or weird. We want people to call us because we want to be able to help. And obviously the main part of our job is education. And so we want people to call us. There's a couple ways you can, besides calling us, you can go to odvr.org or Animal Help Now is a new app that you can have on your phone that you can just type in an area where you're at. And it'll give you locations of animal rescue centers or whatever in the area. And then that's my email if you have any questions. And do you have any questions? I talk really fast. I apologize. But I figure there'll probably be a lot of questions because there's so much that involves with rehabilitation and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. But
So what kind of injuries do the woodcocks get?
They almost always have eye trauma, and all collision birds have cranial swelling. So it's basically a brain bleed. So they don't actually hit a window and break their neck. It's cranial swelling. So that any bird that hits a window should always get treatment because there's always injuries that show up later on. And we've learned this with all these collision birds because a general rule of thumb that people said for years now is that if a bird hit a window, put it in a box, leave it for half an hour, open the box, and see if it flies away. So that's kind of like if a guy gets hit by a car, put him on a couch, just give him a pop for a minute, then just walk home and see how you do. It's the same thing. You don't want to do that, obviously. So now we tell people, put them in a box and bring them to us. We can give them medication. We had a wood thrush that came in 2 years ago that hit a window, and it looked perfectly fine upon when it was brought in. It was hopping around, everything looked fine. The next day, it was flipping in circles, doing backflips, and it couldn't even stand. It would fall over, and it couldn't even stand. Then birds have a really amazing respiratory system, and so they have air sacs in their body that help them recirculate their air as they're breathing it. And those get ruptured from the trauma, so they blow up like a balloon. So, he looks like, the Marshmallow Man, just like with the big thing in his head. So we were able to release that bird, but if we would have let it go that day, it would have died out there. So woodcocks usually so there's 2 collisions when they hit a window. They hit the window, they hit the ground. So most of the time downtown, it's all concrete. So they often get eye injuries is the number one, besides bill injuries, because woodcocks, the way that they feed, they look like aliens. We always get calls in March that someone found alien downtown, and it's a woodcock always. And they're real weird looking birds, and they don't do well on sidewalks. They look perfect with that photo earlier where they blend in, so their eyes are real set like on the side of their heads, so they can feed, but they can't really see straight in front of them or straight behind them. So they hit a window and they get bill injuries and then eye injuries, and they often get shoulder injuries because of they're real fast flyers. And then sometimes they get leg fractures. We had a female come in this year. She was at one of the 4 we released yesterday. I went to take her out of the bag to check her, and her leg was like totally broken sideways. I'm like, oh crap, I got to euthanize her. But then I felt it, and it was hard. I'm like, wait a minute. And I looked at it, and her leg was broken, but it was sideways, but it healed like that. So she somehow injured herself and was just walking on her elbow. But she migrated, and she was doing it. So I'm like, well, I'm going to keep her. She had an eye injury, so that's why we were treating her. But then we had her for, I think, 2 weeks, 3 weeks maybe, and then we just released her yesterday. So she's got a transmitter on her, so we'll be able to track her, so at least we can see if she survived or not. But we had one woodcock that went to the museum. All of our dead birds get sent to the Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Right now they don't have anyone in the collections, but we would send him there, and he had prepared one bird that had a huge hole in its chest. And they were thinking, how did that bird get a hole in its chest? And what happened is the bird hit the window, and the bill busted through the chest, and that killed the bird. So that's usually what they get is those injuries. And their bill is pliable. The tip of their bill, so they can pick up worms under the ground, I saw, Buster Banish. Do you guys know Buster Banish? He's an amazing, he works with the kids in Cleveland, the bird nerds, and we did a woodcock walk at Sandy Ridge a few weeks ago, and he had them put scissors in the ground and try to open them, and they couldn't, and so it was teaching them about woodcock bills because you can't open that under the ground, but the woodcocks do because their upper bill moves, so they probe and so that often gets injured because it's so soft. So yeah, that's an unfortunate thing. What were you gonna say, Larry? You had a question too, Larry, right?
The transmitters you put on them, are those Modus?
Yeah, it's Modus. Yeah, low tech Modus, low transmitters, and every bird gets different sizes. But the woodcock ones are larger, and they're actually solar powered, so they can get the life of the bird. They'll survive if the bird survives, and so that's why some of our birds have done 4 migrations so far, is because they're solar powered, so they can keep going. And so and some of the little birds, like we do magnolia warblers. So the birds that were on our original projects are magnolia warblers, oven birds, wood thrush, gray catbird, American woodcock, white-throated sparrow. I think that was it. And so they get, some of the littler tags only last about 30 days or 60 days, but some of the other tags can last the life of the bird. So it really depends. But there's towers there that the Modus network has around the United States that can not only get birds, but there's insects and stuff on those too, bats. And so we have there's a tower at Huntington that picked up 2 Kirtland's warblers on October 12th, I think it was 2018. So and then one last year too. So we'd never see them if we didn't have that tower, and so it's really good research. So yeah, they get little transmitters, and it's really cool to learn that. More questions? You got more questions, right? Yeah.
I'm wondering, what is it about Canada geese that you're especially fond of?
That's a good question. They're just so. What is the main thing that people say when you say Canada goose? What's the one main thing that people say every time? Well, okay. Besides the poop, that's a good one. Besides the poop, that they're mean, right? Are they mean? No. So I had a volunteer that we had a Canada goose, and he was one of his first days. He was like, ugh, Canada geese. I'm like, well, let me give you an example. So, say you're at the park with your family, your dad, your mom, your brothers and sisters, and some guy runs up on you and is messing with one of your brothers and sisters, and your parents react to that. Are they being mean, or are they being protective? They're protecting their kids. So when you walk up on a goose nest and the male attacks you and you fall on your butt, you were too close to the family. He's not mean. He's protecting his kids. And so I think that's why I love geese. I've loved geese ever since I was little. Did you ever see the movie Fly Away Home? I saw it in the theater when I was it was 1993. So they're just awesome birds. They're misunderstood. They have their own vocalizations. They can talk to each other in certain ways. They're really intelligent. They're beautiful birds, and they're just misunderstood. So I just love them. Yeah.
Hallelujah, all that. What kind of volunteer opportunities are there?
So that's good. I always forget to say that. So thank you. So we need more Lights Out Cleveland volunteers for sure. Larry and Arlene used to help a couple years ago, and they were awesome down there. We need people to help collect these birds that hit windows. All the volunteers are run under the Cleveland Metro Parks now. So if you just go to the Cleveland Metro Parks volunteer website, you can sign up to be a volunteer. May is the busiest month for obviously birding and downtown, and so you can go on there and sign up. There's a little video you have to watch, and it's really fun, and you can learn about birds and save them and walk a lot. There's a lot of walking, but it's a lot of fun, so if you're interested in that. We also have a lot of volunteer opportunities at the center, and so if you go to our website, you can see what volunteer opportunities we have. And we're always looking for more volunteers, especially since we start getting busy in the summer. We're going to need more people, so if people are interested, yeah, that's a good question. Let's forget about the volunteer thing.
I'll attest, it is fun at Lights Out Cleveland.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, my alarm is set for 3:15.
Yeah. It is early. It's very early. But it's weird because, you think of downtown as, there's thousands of people, and it's there's, buses everywhere, which there are. But when you get down there at 5 a.m., there's really not much down there. There's just a lot of birds. And it's that's why we're doing this, is to try to reduce the collisions down there. And we get about 3,000 birds a year on average. And I think we've collected over 14,000 so far. And they're all neotropic migrants. I mean, we never really get, house sparrows don't die down there, unfortunately. And they, we don't get the other migrants, but it's all migrants, hummingbirds, all the warblers, thrushes. And so most birds migrate at night, or most songbirds migrate at night, and they follow the stars and the moon and things like that. And so Dr. Andy Jones, who used to work at the Cleveland Museum of Natural History, was talking to his a fellow birder and ornithologist in Michigan. And why do we get certain birds versus others? We never had a blue-gray gnatcatcher ever so far collected. We get very, very few flycatchers. We've maybe had 7 tanagers total. We don't get really many vireos. And why is that? You know, why do we get like 130 oven birds, but like no, you know, eastern phoebes? So the only thing that they can come to conclusion was that the birds that make night flight calls, we get a lot of. We don't get a lot of catbirds comparatively to how many catbirds are here. You know, I mean, obviously we hear them all over the place. They don't make night flight calls. So we're thinking that as the birds are flying around and they're trapped and they're kind of disoriented down there, they're calling and calling and calling. It brings the other birds in from farther out, and it's just causing an issue. And then the birds are coming in and they're getting more, you know, they're colliding more. So that's really interesting that we would have never known if we didn't take all this data down. So it's I mean, you never know, but the whole point is there's a lot of birds down there. We need help. So there's a lot of birds. And it's really cool to be able to see, you know, you know, when a bird dies, it's sad, but they go to use for science, and they can be learned. Many things can be learned from this. From the Lights on Cleveland project alone, there's researchers that were studying ectoparasites. So that's the parasites that live on the outside of the body. Then there's people studying endoparasites, so the parasites are inside the bird's body. There's one researcher studying parasites in eyeballs specifically of birds. So there's a lot of really cool research that are done with all the dead birds. So yes, the bird died and it's sad, but they can be used for science, and we can learn from that, you know, in the future. So that's the whole. I mean, at least they're not swept up and thrown in the trash. And then the live birds obviously could be, you know, collected, brought to the center where we have a really good success release rate. We've had the rarest birds we've had. Probably we've had 2 blue-winged warblers. We've had 1 golden-winged warbler that was unfortunately deceased. We had, what was it last year? We had a black-headed grosbeak. When I pulled it out of the bag, it said, what did it say on it? Eastern Towhee, I think, on the bag. So I took it out of the bag. I'm just like, and my coworker's like, haha, you're stumped. You know what it is? I'm like, no, I know what it is. I'm just not really sure what I'm looking at right now. And it was a black-headed grosbeak. And so they winter in like Mexico and Central America. And he probably just went up and went to the right instead of going to the left towards California. He went up to Cleveland, and we were able to release that bird and put a tag on it. We got special permission to put a tag on that bird too, so that was kind of cool. But you never know what you're going to see down there, and it's fun to just to rescue all these birds.
Wild turkey?
We had a wild turkey hit one of the windows. She was unfortunately dead, but that bird's huge, so there's like no way that's surviving. We found out last year that black-capped chickadees had a huge migration last winter. There was a lot of chickadees. We collected 79 chickadees down there. Not one was alive, which was weird. But that just shows that when we knew as birders and people doing point counts and stuff, knowing that they were actively moving. But you know, every other year we get a lot of white-breasted nuthatches, yellow-bellied sapsucker. Well, those are every year. But red-bellied woodpeckers, downy woodpeckers, and red-breasted nuthatches. So every 2 years they kind of have an eruption. And we see that with the data that we collect every 2 years. We get a bunch of them. And this last fall, we had a ton of chickadees, and it proved that a lot of the finches and the chickadees are moving, and it correlated with what the people were doing with point counts, finding the birds that we are collecting a lot of chickadees. So it was really interesting. So yeah.
Rather than just collecting the dead birds that crash into windows, is there any effort to either petition or solicit like I know, I'll just name one, the Cleveland Clinic is famous for all those glass windows.
Yep.
Is there any kind of tent or something they can do, or reach out to the architect to say stop making glass buildings?
There is, and so that's not my part of the job, because I wouldn't be good at doing that, because I wouldn't be a professional. So I'll just take care of the birds, and it's people that are higher up, like Matt Schumacher with the Ohio Bird Conservation Initiative, and Harvey Webster with Cleveland. He used to be at Cleveland Museum of Natural History. Those like smart guys are doing that stuff. So they're talking to the building owners and managers and the city. We actually had a meeting with the county in this a few weeks ago, and they're going to treat a bunch of the county windows down there. So that's actually really good, because a couple of the county-owned and managed buildings, there's a lot of birds at. So the one woman, Sunny Simon, there, she's awesome, and she's like, let's get this shit done. We're doing this. And so I'm like, let's do it. So I met with her, and I thought I was having a meeting with her and some people. It was actually like a board meeting through like this big, I'm like, okay, all right, well, let's just do this then. So it worked out really well, and so they have money put aside, and they're going to be treating windows, and I think they're going to do it this year. So that's good. So there is progress happening, but slow for Cleveland for some reason. Some cities are really quick, but some cities are slower, and Cleveland's slower. But we are making progress, but it just takes some time, and we got to get the data to prove like, hey, this is what's really happening. So I mean, yeah.